I was 24 when I took the job at the Northern Star gas station outside Fairbanks, Alaska. I thought it was just temporary, 6 months, maybe a year. I'm 48 now. I never left. Before we dive into the story, tell me from which country you're listening and what time it is there right now. The station sits alone on the Richardson Highway, about 43 miles north of the city. Nothing around it but black spruce forest, mountains in the distance, and sky that stretches forever. During winter, the sun barely rises. During summer, it barely sets. Both seasons mess with your mind. I came to Alaska running from something. Aren't most people? My sister Elena and I had a falling out, and I needed distance, space to figure out who I was without her judgment. The job posting was simple. Overnight shift attendant, 5 nights a week, decent pay, housing provided. I drove up on a Tuesday in late September, the air already turning crisp. The station manager was a guy named Victor. He was maybe 60, with silver hair and eyes that seemed older than his face. Weathered. When I walked into that office, the first thing he did was shake my hand firmly, then hand me a laminated sheet of paper. "Rules," he said simply. "You follow them exactly. No exceptions, no interpretations. You read them, you memorize them, and you don't ask questions." I laughed. I thought he was joking. He wasn't. Looking back now, I should have recognized the warning in his voice. Should have noticed how his hands trembled slightly as he handed me that sheet. Should have seen the desperation in his eyes. Not anger, but something deeper. Resignation. Like someone handing over a burden they couldn't carry anymore. But I needed the job. I needed to disappear. So I took the paper, nodded, and signed the contract right there in that fluorescent-lit office while the wind howled outside and the first snow of the season began to fall. That was my first mistake. The rules were typed on that laminated sheet. I've never forgotten them. 23 rules in total. They weren't suggestions. They were commandments. No customers after 10 p.m. are to be asked questions about their appearance or destination. If a customer requests items not sold in the station, you direct them to the back room without acknowledging their request. The back room must never be accessed during business hours unless instructed by management. All transactions must be completed without eye contact if the customer offers no greeting. Never count the money in the register when a customer is present. If any customer asks for directions north on Highway 12, you inform them the road is closed regardless of weather conditions. The camera system only records footage. It does not monitor in real time. Do not rely on it for security. If the lights flicker twice in succession, lock the front door and remain behind the counter until they stabilize. Never answer the phone if it rings more than 4 times before you answer it. Employees are not permitted in the storage room between the hours of 2 a.m. and 4 a.m. All cleaning supplies are kept in the locked cabinet. The key is on Victor's desk. Do not touch anything in the freezer unit designated restricted. If a customer appears to be injured or bleeding, do not offer medical assistance. Direct them to the bathroom. Never comment on unusual behavior displayed by regular customers. Staff meals must be consumed only in the office, never in the main store area. The list continued. Some rules seemed practical. Lock the door during storms. Others were bizarre. Why couldn't I ask questions about customers? Why was there a restricted freezer unit? Why was the storage room off limits during specific hours? I asked Victor. He just stared at me and said, "Because I said so." "Do you want this job or not?" I nodded and kept my mouth shut. My first shift was a Friday night in late September. The sun set around 8 o'clock. By 9:30, the darkness was total and suffocating. Victor showed me around during the day shift. The station was clean but sparse. Rows of snacks, coffee station, bathroom, and that back room he'd mentioned. When I asked what was in it, he just said, "You'll know if you need to know." At 10 p.m., he left me alone. The first 3 hours were quiet. A few cars stopped for gas. Customers came in for coffee, cigarettes, energy drinks, normal interactions. By 1 in the morning, I'd settled into the rhythm. There was something almost peaceful about the isolation. The hum of fluorescent lights, the occasional semi-truck rumbling past on the highway, the vast Alaskan wilderness pressing against the windows like a living thing. At 2:47 a.m., the door chimed. A woman walked in. She wore a heavy coat despite the temperature being relatively mild. Her face was pale, almost translucent in the harsh light. She went straight to the freezer section, grabbed a bottle of water, and approached the counter. "That'll be $3.50, I said. She didn't respond. Didn't make eye contact. Just slid a $20 bill across the counter. I took it, made change, handed it back. She grabbed the money, took her water, and left without a word. The interaction took maybe 90 seconds, but something felt wrong. Her movements were too smooth, too deliberate, like someone moving through choreography they practiced 1,000 times. When she drove away, I noticed her car had no license plate, just a blank space where it should have been. I thought about Rule 4. All transactions must be completed without eye contact if the customer offers no greeting. I suddenly understood. These rules weren't about the station's operations. They were about survival. Over my first 2 weeks, I noticed patterns. Certain customers came in at the same times, ordered the same items, behaved in almost identical ways. It was like watching reruns of the same episode. The most regular was a man named Klaus. He came in every Tuesday and Thursday around 4 in the morning. He was tall, maybe early 70s, with weathered skin and kind eyes. Unlike most late-night customers, he actually talked to me. "Hell of a place to work," he said one Thursday, sipping black coffee. I like quiet. He studied me for a moment, then leaned against the counter. "You're new. How long you plan to stay?" "Until I figure things out," I said. "Few months." Klaus smiled sadly. "That's what we all think." "What do you mean?" He glanced around the station, then lowered his voice. "How many rules did Victor give you?" I hesitated. 23. "And how many times have you wondered why?" "All the time." Klaus nodded. "I've been coming here for 14 years, every Tuesday and Thursday, 4 a.m., same coffee, same gas if I need it. You know why? Why? Because if I don't, something happens. Can't explain it exactly, but I know it in my bones. I stop coming, something will break, something will go wrong. Maybe something happens to me, maybe something happens to someone I know, but it'll happen. I felt a chill run down my spine. That doesn't make sense. No, Klaus agreed. It doesn't, and that's the whole point. This place doesn't operate on sense. It operates on compliance, on routine, on rules. Klaus, I said carefully, what happens if someone breaks a rule? He stood up straight, finished his coffee in one long gulp, and set the empty cup on the counter. "I don't know. I've never seen it happen, and I hope to God I never do." He left before 4:10 that morning, like always. The day shift cashier was a woman named Petra. She was maybe 30, with tired eyes and a habit of biting her lower lip when she was anxious. She always seemed anxious. Around the 3rd week, she pulled me aside while Victor was doing inventory in the back. "Listen," she said quietly, "I heard Victor hired someone new." "That's you, yeah?" "Yeah. I'm Marcus." "Petra." She didn't offer a handshake, just glanced toward the back room. "I need to tell you something, not because I'm supposed to, because I think you should know." "About what?" "The rules, the station, why it's the way it is." Before she could continue, Victor emerged from the back room. Petra immediately stopped talking, turned away, and busied herself with rearranging the candy displays. I noticed her hands were shaking. "Petra," Victor said, "why don't you take your break?" It wasn't a question. She grabbed her coat and headed out the door without another word. Victor looked at me directly. His expression hadn't changed, but something in his eyes had shifted, something colder. Employees don't discuss station business with each other outside of formal meetings. "Do you understand?" She was just, "Do you understand?" "Yes." "Good." He walked back toward the office. "When you work night shift, you work alone. That's the way it's meant to be. That's the way it needs to be." For the next week, Petra seemed to avoid me. When our shifts overlapped during handoff, she barely made eye contact. Then one day in early November, Victor told me she'd quit. She decided the job wasn't for her, he said flatly. "Happens sometimes. People don't understand what it takes to work here." 2 days later, I saw on the local news that Petra had been in a car accident on the road to Fairbanks. She'd somehow driven straight into a tree despite it being a clear day. The doctors said she was lucky to have survived, but barely. She was in critical condition. I never saw her again after that. By December, I'd settled into the rhythm of the job. Night shifts had become my life. Days were for sleeping, buying groceries, and trying to ignore the growing sense that something was fundamentally wrong with this place. One evening, Victor called me into his office before my shift started. "I'm going to give you an additional responsibility," he said, sliding a key across his desk. "The store drawer. You're now authorized to access it during your shift." "Why?" I asked. "Because you've proven trustworthy. You follow the rules. You don't ask stupid questions." I wanted to correct him. I definitely asked questions, at least internally, but I took the key. "The rules still apply," he continued. 2 a.m. to 4 a.m., you stay out, no exceptions, but the rest of the time you can access it if needed for supply restocking. What's in there that's so restricted? Victor's jaw tightened. "You'll see when you need to see." The first time I used the key was around 11 p.m. on my next shift. The storage room was exactly what I expected. Metal shelves, boxes of supplies, cleaning products, extra stock, boring and mundane. But in the far corner, there was a locked cabinet. Metal, industrial, with a small plaque on it that read, "Temperature controlled, do not disturb." I almost didn't look, almost turned around and left. But curiosity, that old dangerous thing, pulled me forward. I tried the cabinet door. Locked, obviously, but the hinges were visible and one screw was missing. I grabbed a box cutter from a nearby shelf and carefully tried the lock mechanism. It took maybe 3 minutes before something clicked. When I opened the cabinet, the cold air that escaped was unnatural, bitter. My breath fogged immediately. Inside, on a wire rack, were dozens of plastic containers, clear plastic, and inside those containers were things that I still can't quite describe. Parts, maybe, but not animal parts. Not quite. I closed it quickly, backing away slowly, my hands shaking. That's when I realized something crucial. There were rules I'd been given, and then there were rules about what to do if I discovered what I shouldn't have discovered, and I had no idea which category applied to me now. I didn't sleep for 2 days after finding that cabinet. I kept replaying it in my mind. Those containers, that impossible cold, the things inside that my brain couldn't quite categorize or rationalize. What were they? Where did they come from? How long had they been in that storage room? On my third consecutive night shift, I was so exhausted that I could barely keep my eyes open. The station was empty. Even the regular customers seemed to be avoiding it that night. Around 3:15 a.m., someone knocked on the locked front door. It was a man I didn't recognize. Tall, wearing a long dark coat despite the mild weather. His face was gaunt, almost skeletal. When I hesitated to unlock the door, he knocked again, more insistent. I opened it. "I need to speak with you," he said in an accent I couldn't place. "Russian, maybe. About this place." "We're technically closed," I said, though obviously we weren't. "I know who you are," he continued, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. "I know what you found. I know you're afraid. My name is Stefan. I worked here a long time ago. How did you know about the cabinet?" "Because I put some of those items there." He walked to the counter, not meeting my eyes. "And I've been sent to tell you something important. I've been waiting years to tell someone, but there's been nobody like you. Nobody willing to stay. Everybody either runs or breaks the rules." "What does that mean, breaks the rules?" Stefan finally looked at me. His eyes were hollow, haunted. "It means they disappear, or they change, or they become part of the inventory. The inventory, the containers, the things in that cabinet, they used to be people." My entire body went cold. "No, that's not." "Yes," Stefan interrupted. "Listen to me carefully. This station is a collection point. It has been for 40 years. Victor isn't the manager. He's the caretaker. The things that come here, the customers you think are strange, they're not customers. They're specimens. Specimens of something that shouldn't exist. Something between worlds." "You're insane." "Maybe. Or maybe I'm the only sane one left." Stefan pulled out a chair and sat down, uninvited. He looked utterly exhausted, like someone who hadn't slept in decades. "In 1980, he began, a scientist named Dr. Margot Volkova was doing research in these woods, studying wildlife, or at least that's what she told people. But she was really studying something else, something that lives here, something that crossed over during winter of 1979. An interdimensional event, I think. Though I'm not a scientist." "How do you know all this?" "Because Victor told me, after I tried to break the rules." Stefan rubbed his face. "I worked here for 8 years. 8 years I followed every single rule perfectly. But then one night I got curious. I went into the storage room at 2:30 in the morning against the rules. What happened? The lights went out, all of them, complete darkness, and I heard something. A sound like nothing I've ever heard before or since, like metal screaming underwater, like pain translated into frequency. And when the lights came back on, Victor was standing next to me. His face was different, not physically, but something in him had changed. Stefan's hands were shaking now. He told me that by breaking the rule, I'd triggered a response. That certain rules aren't about station safety. They're about suppressing something, keeping something dormant. And once you trigger it, you either have to comply completely or you have to be removed from the equation. Removed, put in a container, preserved, studied, turned into a specimen for whatever intelligence has a collection point in this station. "But you're still here," I said, "and you're alive." "Am I?" Stefan asked. He rolled up his sleeve. His arm was pale, almost translucent. When he moved it under the fluorescent light, I could see something moving beneath the skin, something blue and luminescent. "I made a deal. I left that night but came back exactly 1 year later. I agreed to become a neutral observer. Neither rule breaker nor rule follower. I exist in the space between. It lets me keep human consciousness mostly. But I'm not human anymore. Not really." Stefan told me everything after that. About Dr. Volkova, who discovered that the area around the Richardson Highway was a thin place, a weak point in dimensional barriers. About how an expedition went wrong in the winter of 1979 and things came through that shouldn't have. About how Victor wasn't really Victor. He was a researcher's assistant, Stefan explained. He made a mistake. He opened something that couldn't be closed, so he volunteered to stay here to manage the collection point, to keep the specimens contained and study them. In exchange, he got to maintain human form, most of the time. "How many people have you stored?" I asked. 17, in containers, before I arrived. Since then, maybe another 10. But they're not dead, Marcus. That's the thing nobody understands. They're preserved. Conscious, waiting. The containers keep them in a state of stasis. They're waiting to be studied, transported, or integrated. Integrated into what? The things that come through. They learn from us. They study us. We're specimens to them, and they're something entirely other to us. But neither side is particularly interested in violence. Both sides just want to understand. I felt numb. So my options are, what? Follow all the rules forever? Break them and end up in a container? Or find some middle ground like you? Those are the options, Stefan confirmed. And if I try to leave, you won't make it far. Victor would find you, or the things would. There's something in these woods now, something that doesn't recognize the station's boundaries. Once you've been exposed to this place, you're on the radar. Stefan stood up and walked toward the door. I came here tonight to warn you because I can, because my existence has a certain flexibility, but I need to go. Staying this long might attract attention. He paused at the door. What will you do? I didn't answer. I couldn't. When morning came, Victor asked me how the night had been. I said, fine, normal. I was still deciding what the truth really was. Everything changed after Stefan's visit. The customers came more frequently. The strange ones, I mean. The ones who didn't quite seem human. They came in at odd hours, 3 in the morning, 4:30, 2 o'clock. They never spoke, never made eye contact. They just moved through the station with an unsettling fluidity, grabbed items they never seemed to consume, and left. I stopped trying to understand what they wanted. By January, I'd been working at the Northern Star for 4 months. My sister hadn't called. I hadn't called her. It felt like my old life was something that had happened to someone else. The person I used to be, living in that other dimension, felt increasingly unreal. Then one night, Klaus came in at 4 a.m. like always, except he looked different. His eyes were wrong. They had a faint luminescence to them, just barely perceptible in the dim light. His movements were the same practiced choreography, but something in his joints seemed slightly off, like he was controlling a body that almost, but didn't quite, fit correctly. His voice had that quality, too familiar but subtly wrong. Klaus? He's still in here, the thing wearing Klaus's face said. Somewhere. The containers preserve consciousness, yes, but they also preserve something else, a kind of template. We can recreate a person very accurately when we need to interact with your kind. Klaus is helping us understand you, and you in turn help us understand him. I couldn't move, couldn't speak. Don't be afraid, Klaus, but not, Klaus continued. You're safe here. The station protects you as much as it protects us. Victor maintains the balance. As long as you follow the rules, as long as you stay, you're untouchable. What if I don't want to stay? The thing smiled. Then you become a specimen, which is also safe in its way. You'll understand everything eventually. The confusion will end. Klaus! But not... Klaus bought a coffee that it didn't drink and left at 4:15, exactly on schedule. I realized that the station wasn't a place of horror. It was a place of mercy, or perhaps a different kind of prison. Victor called me into his office on a Tuesday morning in February. I was expecting this. Stefan had warned me that eventually Victor would need to have the conversation, the one about what I was going to do with what I knew. Sit, Victor said, gesturing to a chair across from his desk. I sat. You've been here for 5 months, Victor continued. You followed the rules. You've seen things that most people never see and remain sane. That's remarkable, actually. I'm not sane, I said. I'm just good at pretending. Victor smiled slightly. That's the same thing, really. He leaned back in his chair. I have a proposition for you. You can leave. Right now, walk out, drive back to Lower 48, resume your life. We'll wipe the security footage. I'll tell anyone who asks that you quit. You'll be free. But you'll be monitored. And within a year, perhaps 2, we'll come collect you. You'll become a specimen. Not as punishment, you followed the rules, but because you carry knowledge that needs to be preserved. You'll be stored alongside the others. It's not unpleasant, I'm told. What's the alternative? You stay. Voluntarily. You continue following the rules, but now with full understanding of what this place is. You become a kind of hybrid caretaker like Stefan. Still human, mostly, but invested in maintaining the balance. You serve a purpose greater than yourself, and in exchange, you get to keep living. Real living, not specimen existence. For how long? As long as you want. Decades, possibly, until you're ready to transition, or until the arrangement changes. I thought about Elena, my old life, the person I was before I came here. I'll stay, I said. Victor nodded like he'd known my answer all along. Good. Stefan will be here tomorrow to explain your new responsibilities. I'd made my choice. There was no going back. Stefan started my training the next day. Over the next few weeks, he showed me everything. The protocols for accepting new specimens, how to identify a transition moment when someone was about to break a rule and when to intervene before they did, how to read the patterns in customer behavior that indicated something was changing in the interdimensional environment. The station had cameras, yes, but not pointed at the customers. They were pointed at me, at all the staff. Victor watched the footage constantly, analyzing our stress levels, our compliance patterns, our psychological states. I was being studied as much as the specimens were. It's not malicious, Stefan explained as we worked in the storage room late one night. Victor and the others, they're trying to understand human psychology. Why we fear change, why we're so desperate for control. Your kind is fascinating to them. You create elaborate social structures to convince yourselves you're in charge of a chaotic universe. Are we? I asked. No, Stefan said simply. Neither are they, really. Everyone's just following patterns, rules, spoken or unspoken. The difference is that they've stopped pretending there's anything more to it. They lived in a section of the storage facility that I'd never known existed, a whole underground room accessed through a passage behind the locked freezer. The containers were arranged on shelves, each one labeled with a date and a name, human names. Some dated back to 1980. Others were from just months ago. Inside each container, suspended in a luminescent blue fluid, was a person, perfectly preserved, eyes sometimes open, sometimes closed. Occasionally one would shift slightly, and I'd realize they were aware, conscious, waiting. How long? I asked Stefan, pointing at one container marked James Richardson, 1983. 41 years, Stefan replied. 41 years of observation. They're learning very slowly. Time moves differently for them in the stasis. What feels like 41 years to us might feel like a few months to them. Will they ever be released? Stefan didn't answer. He just walked back upstairs, leaving me alone with the specimens and their infinite, suspended patience. By June, I'd been at the Northern Star for 9 months. The seasons had cycled. Summer brought endless daylight. The drive to Fairbanks took on a surreal quality when the sun never set. I rarely left the station anymore. There was no need. Everything I needed was provided. And leaving, I'd learned, would trigger observations and questions I didn't want to answer. I was becoming something other than human. Not like Stefan, not yet, but I could feel the change. My sense of time was becoming flexible. My need for sleep was diminishing. My emotional responses to things that would have horrified the old Marcus were becoming clinical, analytical. I was becoming like them, like Victor, like the caretakers of this place. Then Elena called. It was mid-July, around 11 p.m. I picked up the station phone. I rarely did, and heard my sister's voice for the first time in nearly a year. Marcus? She sounded older, tired. Oh my God, I wasn't sure you'd even answer. Elena? I've been trying to find you, she said, her voice cracking slightly. Nobody knew where you'd gone. You just disappeared. Our mother got sick 6 months ago. Cancer. She's been asking for you. She's dying, Marcus. She's in hospice now. The information reached me, but it didn't land right. It felt like hearing about someone else's tragedy, news from another dimension. Marcus? Are you there? I'm here, I said quietly. Can you come, please? Just for a few days? She keeps asking if you're coming home. She thinks you did something wrong. She thinks that's why you left. I looked around the station, at the fluorescent lights, at the endless highway stretching into darkness. At my life here, preserved in amber like the specimens downstairs. I can't leave, I said. What? Why not? Marcus, our mother is dying. I hung up the phone. My hands were shaking. For the first time in months, I felt something break inside me. Something that had been holding on to humanity by a thread. Victor found me sitting behind the counter an hour later. She called, I said. I know, Victor replied. We heard. Why didn't you stop me from talking to her? Because you needed to make a choice, Victor said, sitting down across from me. And now you have. You've severed your last connection to your old life. That's necessary. That's how you transition fully. I don't want to transition, I whispered. Yes, you do, Victor said. You've wanted it for months. You're tired of being conflicted, tired of pretending you're still human. Soon, you won't have to pretend anymore. Something changed after that phone call. The symptoms started small. My skin felt too tight in certain places. My vision shifted slightly, colors becoming more vivid, then less vivid, then overlapping in ways that shouldn't be possible. I could see things in the infrared spectrum. I could sense emotional states through air currents and minute changes in atmospheric pressure. I was becoming something else. Stefan helped me through it. He showed me how to control the sensory overload. How to integrate the new ways of perceiving without losing the human consciousness that was still somehow intact beneath the changes. It takes about 8 weeks, Stefan explained, his own luminescent eyes glowing softly in the darkness. Total transition. You'll retain most of your memories, your personality, your sense of self. But you'll perceive reality fundamentally differently, multiple layers at once. It's actually quite beautiful once you stop fighting it. By late August, I could barely recognize myself in the mirror. My skin had taken on that same faint translucence Stefan had. My eyes glowed softly with that blue luminescence. When I moved, my joints bent in ways that felt natural to me but would have horrified the old Marcus. My thoughts were faster now, clearer. I could process multiple conversations simultaneously. I could see the station from 17 different perspectives at once, including angles that didn't quite exist in normal three-dimensional space. Victor brought me new paperwork one evening. "You need a new name," he said. "You can't be Marcus anymore. That person is gone. Choose something that feels right." I thought about it for only a moment. "Roman," I said. The name felt correct on my transformed vocal cords. "My new name is Roman." Victor smiled. "Welcome to the other side, Roman. Your old life has ended. Your new one has only just begun." I looked at the paperwork. A new identity, a new social security number, a new existence registered in systems that would explain my presence here forever. "What happens now?" I asked. "You help us," Victor said simply. "You help us understand your kind. And when new specimens arrive, you help them understand what they become. You become a bridge between worlds." 24 years have passed since then. I'm not Marcus anymore, not really. My human life feels like a dream I had once, experienced by someone else. Elena's name doesn't even trigger emotional responses anymore. My mother passed 9 years ago. I didn't go to her funeral. That person couldn't have gone anyway, couldn't have survived the trip, couldn't have endured the questions. I've been many things at this station, a caretaker, a researcher, a bridge between the human and the other. I've helped preserve 43 specimens. I've helped maintain the balance between worlds. The station operates as it always has, rules written on laminated sheets, customers who aren't quite customers, a rotating series of night shift workers who come, work, and eventually make a choice, leave and be collected, or stay and transform. Klaus still comes on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 4 a.m., though he's been a container specimen for 18 years now. His body still works, still moves through the familiar patterns. It's a mercy, in a way. Consciousness preserved, existence maintained. Yesterday, a new employee started. His name is David, 24 years old. Looks like I did when I first arrived, confused, desperate, running from something. Victor gave him the laminated sheet of 23 rules. "You follow them exactly," Victor said. "No exceptions, no interpretations. You read them, you memorized them, and you don't ask questions." I watched David take the sheet with trembling hands. I remembered that moment, the precise weight of choice in that single gesture. By next spring, he'll be where I am now, or he'll be in a container, preserved and waiting, or he'll have attempted to leave and disappeared into the Alaskan wilderness, never to be found. The cycle continues. I'm 48 years old, or I was. Time means something different to me now. Sometimes I forget what year it is. Sometimes I remember being Marcus. Sometimes that seems like yesterday. Sometimes it seems like an ancient history, something that happened to someone else in a different dimension entirely. The thing I know for certain is this: I never left the Northern Star gas station, and I never will. Some choices, once made, echo forever through eternity.